So, guys, we are back in the C-suite at 519, the Laymans project. Once again, so I'm going to let Franz introduce our guest, someone that you definitely need to know, and then we'll get into it. So, Franz, take it away.
Thank you. Nikolas "Niko" Khan is the general manager at the helm of Loop News, which
Who's
is
Nikolas?
I just man, you know,
What
longer
the
than somebody
hell
call
is
me
that?
Nicholas. People just only call me Nicholas when I'm in trouble.
Go ahead.
sorry, go on.
Nikolas "Niko" Khan is the general. I was hoping to get through the whole thing, you know. Is the general manager at the helm of Loop News, which is the Caribbean's largest news and content distribution platform, used by millions of people each month. While most Trinis might be familiar with Loop TT, a fun fact to know is that it actually spans multiple islands in the Caribbean, and like Loop TT, it has an equally significant presence in Jamaica, Barbados, Haiti, St. Lucia, and most of the English-speaking Caribbean. When he is not working on Loop, he is also one of the contributing minds to the success of one of Port of Spain's most loved restaurants, Lola's Food Company, where he is responsible for their social presence, growth, and marketing, directly supporting his chef/restaurateur wife in the running of her business. He's also an avid investor and entrepreneur in multiple areas outside of both of those. And while we won't have time to get into all the details, let's just summarize by saying he's a busy guy and we appreciate his time. So, Nikolas, welcome to the show.
Welcome, buddy.
Ever since I left the city, Ever since I left the city, Ever since I left the city, Ever since I left the city,
Okay, guys, let me tell you all something about Fluke Designs. Today's sponsor will allow you to furnish your home with cabinetry and countertops. Their professional designs provide various options, allowing you to seamlessly integrate appliances into your living space. You can also have hurricane impact windows and doors designed and built with laminated glass. You guys can check them out on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. They provide free video chat consultations with their designer, or a site visit can be arranged. In case you'd like to book an appointment, please call or WhatsApp 388-5279. That's 388-5279. And don't forget to use promo code Laymans to save 5% on your order. Fluke Designs. You dream, we design, and build.
And before we start, I would just like to ask everybody to write which one is you in the comments. A grand total of
If you know,
15
you know.
people will get that joke, but they'll really appreciate it. So please, which one is you in the comments right now? Thank you. Niko, welcome.
Thank you very much, Franz. I have to say, you all really, that was a hell of an intro, right? So catch me off guard. Usually I am the person catching people off guard, but
Yeah.
well played, right? But I mean, yeah, you know, first of all, I should say congratulations on the launch of the show and the couple of successful episodes that you guys have going so far.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
And I know the format of the show is pre-recorded. I don't know exactly when this one is going to air. I don't know how many episodes will actually be live at the point when we actually put this one up. But even the episodes that you guys have released so far have been really, really good, right? And hats off to both of you, as I think we were talking about it earlier. Two guys that haven't really done this type of thing before, you know, hosting a show and everything like that. It really is a skill that is unique. Not everybody makes a good host. I think you guys have done a really good job so far with the guests that you've had on, the information and the topics that you managed to bring out to them, right? So that has been fantastic. I've really been enjoying it. And quite frankly, I'm humbled that I was actually asked to be a guest on this, right? I really appreciate that.
We appreciate you coming on, and that felt like a humble brag.
Why?
Because I said the word humble.
Well, he used the word humble, and then he congratulated us on the quality of our guests, of which he is one tonight.
Touche.
Sly.
Yeah.
Yeah, nah, definitely a humble brag.
That's a Niko move.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
That dick.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify for anybody watching, Niko did not say that because he's on the show, because Niko is my personal friend for many, many, many years, friends as well, and he is somebody that I regularly consult with. So you want to get advice, tips, let me know where I'm going wrong. And Niko will definitely tell me, I feel like you need to do this better. This is not good. X, Y, Z. So I always feel like I'm going in the right direction. If Niko says, yeah, I like this. I mean, obviously, the position he has, he's versed in media marketing. So if it comes from Niko like this is good, I like this X, Y, Z, that is something that I would try to, fine tune, sharpen.
Yeah, what Vaughn trying to say is whatever I tell him, he's do the opposite of it. Not very
Right.
Yeah, so
So Vaughn is an ask hole. Ask and then just do take the advice.
I'm not touching that one.
That is definitely not true.
No, I know that. It's just
For a lot of things, when me and Niko correspond, he will tell me something, and I will definitely be like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." Into the bin. That is not gonna. We are not gonna get away with that. So
Yeah, I don't think anybody, the public should definitely not see the chat that Vaughn and I have. It's not for
yeah,
the
that is that'll cross the show.
So yeah.
So tell us about. We will talk about the main talking points. I first of all, and I know this is going to irritate friends, but I would like to get into the stuff that you said you might not have time to talk about, because I personally am very interested in like your sideline investment, because I actually know you personally, so I know enough about Lola's Loop. I definitely wanna get more, for obvious reasons, more insight into how Loop works as a machine. But how did you get yourself like into like the stock market stuff like that? I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
I mean, so very mindful that again, don't want to humble brag, right? But I
You
think-
could be you can obnoxious brag if you want.
Yeah,
you know?
no, just kidding, bro. I think really, if I really take a step back and kind of look at where my life was about 10 years ago, right? I was in a very different place than I am now, and I'm very grateful for that, right? And it really just started with, maybe about, say, that odd 10 years ago, kind of taking a look at my life and saying, well, where am I at now and where I really want to be, right? And I think what got me here wouldn't get me there, right? And, everybody here has an idea what you want out of your life, and I think that at some point you're going to have a kind of come to Jesus moment where you realize, okay, what I'm doing now is probably cool to keep me at this level, but and nothing wrong with that level, right? It's fine, it's covering your bills, it's doing everything like that, but what do you want to achieve and what do you want to get out of your life? And then you actually need to take conscious steps to get there. It's not going to just fall into your lap, right? You actually need to think about it, plan for it, strategize, and go towards it. And for me, what happened was I wasn't happy with where I was at in life. Not that life was particularly bad or anything, but I wasn't fulfilled and I didn't feel like I was getting the most out of what I wanted, right? And I really just went on a huge push and drive of self-learning, right? I got addicted to reading and consuming material across all different types of things, whether that is psychology, emotional intelligence, whether that is making money, investing in the stock market. I learned about real estate, property management, you name it, right? I just started to consume books like crazy, right? And the goal I set for myself and how I got into that type of stuff was I set this kind of weird goal, which was I am going to read my age in books each year. That was the goal I set. So, all right, you know what? I'm 29 now. I'm going to read 29 books this year. I'm going to make sure 30 years old, 30, and I kept pushing it up, right? And eventually you're going to cap off because, with time and their age going up and everything, it becomes a little bit more difficult. But I really tried to take the learnings out of the books and apply them to my own life, right? And one of the interesting things that you learn too is that you can't just read these things and not act on them. You actually have to act on them, right? It's okay to consume all the information. You can sit down and read all the books, you can listen to all the podcasts, you can watch all the YouTube videos, but it's like watching YouTube videos about people working out, right? Yeah, you'll learn a lot from it, but unless you actually go out there and do it yourself, then
it's not going to affect you at all.
Exactly, right? So, I mean, I had my corporate job around the same time. My wife was now opening her restaurant, and she's done a absolutely fantastic job with that. But with me, I just started to take the learnings that I had from all these books. And about France, you in particular, I would say about 10 years ago, even my living situation, I was, very different than what I have now. You would have met me living in a house with a roommate at the time. And, now, I own properties, everything like that. So it's a different thing, right? But it really was just application of knowledge and taking a certain amount of risk and trying to spread it around and learning different things, right? So like you mentioned, I'm invested in different things across, some in Trinidad, some outside of Trinidad. It's different things. I got into stocks, I got into cryptocurrencies. It's all types of different things, right? I won't necessarily go into it. The real learning is that there are many different parts, many different things that everybody could be doing. But one, you have to actually want to learn about it, because nobody's actually going to sit down and give you that information. You're going to have to seek it out yourself. And then two, you're going to actually have to act on it and be able to actually put that into action and, make it into something, right? And that's really it. So, it really was no set path. It was just my own interest and my own, wanting to really develop into something. Yeah.
Knowing is not enough. You must apply.
Yeah, exactly.
Bruce Lee.
So, and just to kind of cap that last statement you made there off France, a lot of times, actually, let me take a step back. It goes back to something that all of us was discussing in the room here earlier, which is something you just need to get started. A lot of people just don't get started. They're in the, what they call the analysis paralysis phase, where you're just thinking about it, talking about it, you're telling everybody you're going to do this thing, but you don't actually do it. You don't actually go to the gym. You tell people, I'm going to start working out, but you don't actually start the podcast because you're obsessing over what the mics are that you need to buy and what the cameras are that you need to buy and that stuff like that, right? So sometimes talking about it and doing it takes the same amount of effort, so you might as well just do it, right? And that's the way that I look at it.
Some people like to use the gym analogy. Some people actually say, no, well, I want to get in better shape before I join the gym. So they don't look out of place in the gym trying to get into better shape.
Yeah.
Which makes even less sense than, well, I'm trying to get equipment to do this
That's
thing.
That's literally me. I remember before we started working together, I was extremely self-conscious about like my appearance. I think I mentioned that to you. I did mention that to you.
What, before you came by Raw?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
I
did,
started.
you did,
I started training. I started training before I could start training there.
But you started the training now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is people will say now, well, I'm going to start working out to get in shape to then go to the gym.
Yeah.
But because they haven't taken the step of joining a gym, they don't ever start working out.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of understand where it's coming from, right? Because, again, don't kill me, but I think personally that everybody who's probably in the gym has some level of insecurity driving them, right? Because you're not happy about something about yourself and you want to drive it. And that's not necessarily...
I used to be tiny, so yeah.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, good things come out of whatever, right? But it's not unheard of, I think a lot of people, even those who probably go to the gym the most, some of those people might be the most insecure, right? And they need this, right, to make themselves feel a certain way. So I don't think it's unheard of that you find people who they're not even confident to go in the gym the way they look. They want to make sure that they look a certain way before they go there, right? So, I mean, it's not something I personally suffer from, but if somebody told me that somebody else was like that, I'd be like, probably not the strangest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Am I that insecure?
Yeah.
Look at your size, so of course you're that insecure. Obviously.
As he casually flexes his guns.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so just to cap off the gym thing, I don't think everybody in the gym is insecure, but they're definitely there for some form of development.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're necessarily insecure about where they are now. They're just, as you wanted to do, just want to improve. Like, you're fine now, but could be better.
Yeah.
Let's be better.
And I mean, recapping it, and I have to be very mindful when you throw like wide statements like that. I'm not saying people are insecure. What I should do is soften that a bit and say, you're not satisfied with the level you're on right now.
That's exactly what I mean.
For whatever you're saying, and that's not necessarily insecurity. And that's a healthy thing, if it is that you're telling yourself, hey, I am not satisfied with where I'm at right now, I want to make sure.
Yeah, that's like reading 29 books. I mean,
constant personal growth should be a goal. It doesn't mean you're unhappy. You just, if better can be done, then do better.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. Yep.
So to jump into Loop, and this will be a multi-tiered question. I want you to talk us through the slow, inexorable death of print media, the genesis of Loop, and how you got involved with it.
Okay, cool. I mean, you wasn't kidding when you say that's a multi-tiered question.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So again, there's a lot to unpack here. So if I start to go off topic, or if there's anything I don't touch on that you want answered, just be sure to bring me back in line.
Well, I mean,
No problemo.
the death of print media, you could,
Yeah.
I guess, maybe summarize and then
Yeah, I mean,
jump
well,
into loop.
the data print media is not a unique thing to Trinidad per se, right?
No, definitely
Yeah,
not.
it's something that's a global thing that's been happening the world over. And this doesn't only apply to news, this is generally all print formats, magazines, everything. You remember how big they were when we were growing up, right? And it's natural, right? Media changes over time as, technologies evolve. We've seen it time and time again through all the different decades. It's a natural kind of just evolution that happens as the new formats come out and people start to consume things in different ways. I personally was never really into the media game and didn't really work on the print side of the business or anything like that, right? My background has always been more from the technology side of things, right? And anybody that knows me through my entire career knows that I kind of started off in a IT background and then I kind of pivoted into marketing, but I always had that kind of technical background to me, right? So I think it would be unfair for me to speak to the print media in particular in depth because it's not my area of expertise. The main thing that I could touch on is just that print media is in decline. Print media is pretty much dead, except for very specific niche formats across the world, right? There's certain publications that people still really good, that are still really subscribed to, but let's be real. It's not where it used to be, let's say, in our parents' generation where print media was everything. The game has just changed, right? And the brands that were historically very strong in print media, they themselves have moved online and have adapted. And some didn't make it, some did, some made the transition and they've adapted into the new format, right? To use that point, right, and to springboard into Loop now, I think that's where Loop was kind of born from, right? This is Loop's 10th year of existence, sorry. And when you look back at what the past decade was, while I'm the general manager of Loop now, I didn't start off as the general manager of Loop, right? Touching back on that technology point, when I started there, I was really what they call the head of product, right? And the head of product was responsible for building out the platforms, the applications, the backends, everything that ran Loop. And where Loop was really unique is Loop was always built from the start as a digital-only content and news platform. And while that might not seem like the wildest idea now,
Back then, 10 years ago.
if you go 10 years ago, it was kind of...
I remember when it started off and I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure,
Exactly.
because Trinidad has always been a bit behind the curve on everything,
Yeah,
especially anything technological.
yeah.
So I remember when you personally started promoting Loop,
Yeah.
I was questioning its survivability.
Yeah, I mean, well, you wouldn't have been the only person, right? And trust me, in the early days of Loop, we heard a lot of things coming our way, and full credit to the team that was there and that helped build it into what it was today. It was a kind of hostile environment. Sometimes you go in rooms, you're trying to build the company into something. People are laughing at you and like, who's them? And that type of mentality, right? And you can't let it sway you too much off the path. But it kind of to just touch back on the point that it seems totally normal now for us to say we have a digital media house that does no print and we don't have anything like that. But 10 years ago, doing that in Trinidad, everybody was like, they're not a real media company, they're not a real news house, right? But what had happened, right? And I mean, there's 10 years of history here, so I'm really just trying to pull out the main points in terms of what I think to be the most important things. Is, I think when Loop started, it was really disruptive. Regardless of what anybody says, that's my personal belief, right? I think it was really disruptive to not just Trinidad, but as you mentioned, all the different islands that we were in. Because suddenly you had this brand new upstart that just came out of nowhere. And I mean, maybe this is not a 100% accurate statement. This is my recollection of it. But I would recall 10 years ago, because the big media houses were still so focused on their normal operations, digital was an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them had their websites, but the websites were just an afterthought. They weren't properly built, they weren't properly maintained, they had no mobile applications. Sometimes the news would be very slow to go up on the website, so you might get the news slow. It doesn't break on the website in terms of that. It doesn't come out on social media very quickly. And to my best recollection, when we came out, we disrupted the market in that way, right? Which was, all of a sudden, this scrappy startup came out of nowhere, and then it just started spitting out. Ask anybody, if it's one thing they used to say about Loop when Loop first came out, is that as something happened, you all won the ball. Everybody would see it happening, right? It was just so fast to come out. They couldn't understand what was going on, right? And yeah, I mean, one of my things that I'm very proud of is I think we forced behavior change in the markets that we're in. It seems to be normal now, and it's what we accept as normal, but I fundamentally believe that we were responsible for pushing a lot of the digital transformation of the other media houses because they had to respond, right? All of a sudden, they had to take online news seriously and start to get things out very quickly and that type of stuff, right? So, yeah, you know, it's a great thing to actually just watch something that was, you know, at 1 minute people were laughing at you, right? And you know, I can't remember the old saying now, but first they laugh
at you and then they fight you down and then
and then you win, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot like what it felt like. You came out of nowhere, everybody was not taking you seriously. They were laughing at you, they were trying to make you feel very bad about what you were doing. And then all of a sudden it's kind of, wait a minute, what's going on here? These guys are gathering steam, and then all of a sudden we announced our app has 1 million downloads, which was unheard of, right? At that time, like our Caribbean News app getting 1 million downloads. And then you would start to see Loop announcing traffic. Oh, wait, we have 2 million users a month, 3 million users a month, all this stuff. They would be like, well, what's going on here? Right? And, you know, again, it's not very many times in life that you get the opportunity to get in on the ground floor of something that's being built and help to build it into something that is, one, disruptive, and two, very highly used. And that's something that I'm always very grateful for in my life, that I was able to, you know, have that experience and work with a great team, because it's not me, you know. It's a team of people that work on this thing, and I have put blood, sweat, tears into building this thing into what it is, and here we are today, right? It's a household name in the Caribbean. Most of the people that really know it, right? And you know, it still is widely used by millions of people, despite all the changes and everything that have come our way. It's being used, you know, still 10 years later.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was the app. The app part of it that was really disruptive.
Yeah.
And I remember when it came out, and I forget what your tagline would have been, but it was news on your phone.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, who wants to read news on their phone?
Yeah.
But Niko believes in this, because, I mean, when you're promoting something is everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So like if Niko believes in this, then this has something in it, because Niko know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean...
Well, I think, you know, touching on the news on your phone. So, for full disclaimer, right, so everybody knows, Loop is actually owned by Digicel Group. Loop is not mine.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So,
right. So if everybody knows.
For the audience who's listening to this, right? So it's owned by Digicel Group, but you know, with that said, it's kind of always operated in its own certain level of autonomy. You know, and full credit to Digicel. You know, they would allow us to build this media house, and you know, it's a very different business from the telecom business, as you would imagine, right? So when you're building this media house within a telecom business, there's
because it's kind of hard to make the association if you think about it like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right, but that would kind of explain, I guess, to the audience also why Loop had this kind of mobile first mentality, because you could see where the synergy is there. You know? You know, we are trying to push mobile adoption and everything like that, and we're seeing this opportunity. So it was these kind of thought processes that was driving this company rather than just what would have been driving the other traditional media companies, right? And you know, from the start, we designed it very, very unique to really be, one, mobile friendly, so the app, but it's not just the app, how you actually create your news and lay it out and stuff like that. Everything was done from a mobile point of view from the start. Our stories were always very short, right? We did not do opinion pieces. People just liked the fact that what they associated us with was a fairly objective story. There's no opinion on it. I just want to be able to get into the app, get the cliff notes, more or less. That's what happened. Somebody, you know, there was a car accident today, it happened at 3 p.m., blah, 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 blah. The end. That was it. So, the story sometimes 200 words, the end, right? And I could quickly open this on my phone, see what's happening. And before you knew it, the behavior just picked up. And if you really look at it now, that's kind of how people consume the majority of the news now. It's very, very quick, right? You know, so yeah, I mean, it's crazy when you look back and you think about it, how much ever years ago, and now it's just become the norm, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I think anything worth investing your time into like that usually kind of demands a lot of said time, you know. And like I'm actually soaking in all the information that we talk all the time, but like I literally always internalize whatever advice I get, because remember really and truly what you did is what I guess we would like to do as well, because to be realistic, podcasting is not a huge thing in, I want to say, Trinidad or the Caribbean. Really, I could be wrong.
Well, let me
Well,
touch
that
on.
was going to be my next question because the Loop actually did a survey fairly recently.
Yeah, recently.
And I mean, I noticed it because Vaughn and I had started talking about the podcast already.
I think he sent me the link.
Yeah, but I had seen it come up on Facebook or something. No, I saw the request for a survey come up on Facebook. So I knew Loop was doing the study. So I took part in the survey, and I was telling myself I'm real interested in the outcome of this because we were talking about getting this thing started. And so, what were the results of that survey?
Well, I mean, oh god, that's a couple months ago. So I hope I don't butcher these results too much, right? But the general takeaway from the results of the survey that we did around podcasting in the Caribbean, and of course, we are doing this for our own purpose as well, to kind of collect
Naturally.
data points as Loop continues to evolve as a media company. With the wide reach and distribution that we have, it's sometimes good to be used as a data collection platform for research like that, right? So let's talk to our audience and see what's going on, what they feel about podcasting in the Caribbean, because it's one of those places, like all things we're late move on. It's in the Caribbean where it's taken the world by storm. You have all these shows with millions of people listening to it. Nobody's really knocking it out of the park, at least to my knowledge, from a Caribbean point of view yet, right? But it's coming, right? So let's kind of see what the appetite is there for it. And based on what I remember from that survey, it was over 70% of the people who responded, and it was by no means a small amount of responses. It was, let's say, maybe just shy of about 1,000 responses, which was pretty good. You have about 1,000 people, and let's say roughly 75% of them said yes. I'm into podcasting. I listen to podcasts all the time, which we were blown away by because we hadn't anticipated that many people, that higher percentage of people of the sample that went out would have come back and said, this is what I actually consume, right? And I mean, forgive me, at this point I can't really go because it's multiple data points. We asked things about what type of podcast you consume.
Yeah, and how long you listen to it for, and that kind of thing,
that type of
what
stuff.
platform,
Yeah,
all that,
exactly.
yeah.
But the general takeaway was podcasting is already here in the Caribbean, right? It's not coming, it's already here.
Podcast consumption, you mean?
Podcast consumption is already here. Whether or not you are creating it, people in the Caribbean are listening to it, they're consuming
Yeah.
it, they're consuming it internationally, whether that is a Joe Rogan or whether that is a religious,
Williamson or
exactly, Chris
Fresh and
Williamson,
Fit.
exactly, Fresh and Fit, or it may be no, but I mean it's one of the things the data points showed, I remember, was it was actually really wide and varied. Some of it was music podcasts, some of it was relationship and dating, some of it was comedy, right? Some of it was religious. It's all over the place. So there was not like one standout real topic, but it was showing you that people of all interests are actually listening to podcasts and they're consuming it. And it's a kind of change of thought as compared to what a lot of people are doing in the Caribbean right now. And I believe that we are now on the verge of really starting to see this thing ramping up, and a lot of different media companies and everything like that are probably going to start to embrace it a little bit more. And that's why I would say, like, hats off to you guys on what you're doing here. It's a new start. It's a fairly small production, but sometimes it's just to get started and just keep the momentum going, right? And by all means, based on what we're seeing, you're here doing it at the right time because the audience is there. Just build it and they will come. I believe that's what you're seeing at this moment. Yep.
Because this is basically, I guess, the inception of, I guess, the Caribbean podcast era.
Yeah, I think so. Because, I mean, I've noticed, of course, if you buy a blue car, you'll only see blue cars on the road for a little while. But I've noticed a lot of people that I know are starting podcasts, and it's all around the same kind of time that Vaughn and I were talking about this. Just before we recorded the first one, I saw a friend of mine post his first episode, and as we were getting ready, I got a call to maybe be on another one to talk about mental health, and like, wait, people podcast down here? I didn't even know this was a thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think it's the tide is rising for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there have been people who have really been on the cutting edge of it, who've been doing podcasts in the Caribbean for a while now, right? But like all things when it comes to media, sometimes you might start, but the audience mightn't quite be there yet. It will be very, very niche. But as more people kind of get onto it on the mainstream, sometimes the international media drives the behavior change you're looking for. And then now that people have gotten accustomed to that behavior change, now you could kind of start to do your own thing, and people start to say, hey, I'm already familiar with podcasts, and this thing pops up, right? And, even kind of going back to Loop for a second, like I mentioned, so I was mainly the head of product there, which was mostly a technical role over the past couple of years. Building multiple iterations of Loop and all the different apps and whatever we had. My role as general manager has only really been, let's say, about a year and a half now to about 2 years max, right? And part of my big challenge that I have ahead, I shouldn't say ahead, it's ongoing right now, and what I'm working on, and where the majority of my effort goes into on a daily basis, is taking us from where we are now into what is the next step, right? Because the media space is changing daily, the technology space is changing daily, and social media in particular is changing daily. The algorithms are changing daily, what they prioritize changes, and it's a lot to wrap your head around. It's a lot of chaos, a lot of change, and you're trying to keep business as usual running while you also try to
Evolve
and tap into these new different areas, right? So just again, it's a really exciting space to work in. It is by no means easy, but it's an exciting space to work in. You always have something to think about or tackle, or how you adjust to this and how you change this and that type of stuff, right? So, as it relates to the whole news business right now, even globally, it's a weird time too. If you really have been paying attention to the stats of most major publishers across the world and mainstream media and the news houses and stuff like that, it's been a tough time for most of them, right? They're not making a lot of money. They are still expected to put out all the same level of content that they have, and same level of journalistic integrity, and same level of fact checking and stuff like that. Things that people could on social media probably not help.
Don't have to bother with.
Exactly, right? But then, the advertising money isn't there like it used to be before, because there's all the different factors that go into it, right? So it is a challenging time as publishers across the world kind of look at what's next and how do we actually keep this thing running and try new formats and how do we actually make it work. And then you have things pile on top of that, like, say, for example, Facebook and even X are deprioritizing news a lot of times too, because, with all that thing about misinformation or whatever, I think their whole thing is we don't want to smoke, so let's kind of not be front and center as it used to be. So there's a lot of things changing, man. Less traffic coming from social media. Do I put more stuff on social media? Do I put it on my own platform? So, yeah, very, very interesting time.
Like, personally, it was important for the podcast just to have intelligent content, but I still wanted it to be, kind of fresh, relevant, because that is what is going to engage the people that typically consume this type of media. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
but I mean, we have the thing about the modern day too is that we have so much data. Like, they could get into data overload, right? But there's a really interesting report from a digital media point of view that comes out once a year, and it's done by Reuters, right? And they do a digital media, like, massive survey, media all over the world, social media, publishers, see how things are going. And generally, the main takeaway is, let's say, over the past 2 years, to nobody's surprise, is that one, news consumption is going down, or at least what we would consider to be traditional news consumption, right? People are looking at different formats for news, like you rightly touched on, right? So you're still consuming news and current events, but it's starting to trend more towards, let's say, formats such as video and audio, whereas it might have been more written before, right? And it's not to say written is gone, but people are more inclined to consume video and audio than they've ever been before. The platforms that they're using to consume have changed as well, because I think what you're seeing is a decline for publishers all over the world and content creators, where before it would be owned channels. So I will go to your website, or I will go on your app and I will read your news and stuff there. Again, not gone away, but I think the prevalence of it has fallen over time, and you're starting to see the rise of people just wanting to consume the content where they already are, right? And
on social media.
Exactly, where they already are on social media. And I mean, there's give and take with that too, because you as a publisher, the more you rely on social media is the more you're at their mercy. And these networks can just change something tomorrow, and then it's back to the drawing board, right? Because they could wake up tomorrow, make a decision and say, well, this is algorithm has changed tomorrow, and then you have to scramble now and change it, right? I think the next thing that is really interesting is, particularly speaking again from the news space, is you tend to see a lot of audiences are aging with the product. And with that, you really do need to be thinking about how am I actually bringing new audiences in, because this audience is growing up with us, but we're not actually bringing in new people on the bottom. And I think that is where a lot of the discussion around different formats and different networks and everything like that comes into play. Because let's say average person who's maybe in their 40s or 50s, I can guarantee you they're consuming the information in very different ways and through different channels than say somebody who is maybe Gen Z or teens or whatever, right? If you even think about how news spreads right now, some of the older people might be more inclined to circulate news, WhatsApp forwards, and share it with each other.
Along with good morning messages.
Exactly, along with good morning messages and prayers and stuff like that. But a lot of times on the flip side, sometimes I meet people who are significantly younger than me, and when if I get into a talk somehow maybe about what I do, and I mean as widely used as Loop is and as household known as it is, sometimes they ask me what I do, and I tell them, well, I work at Loop News, and they say, well, what's that? I never heard about it in my life. And again, it's just the reality of the situation, right? The younger generation a lot of times are kind of insulated from some of this stuff, but maybe that's because we haven't done the best job at reaching them where they are, right? And that's the reality of it, right? And that's why we need these new formats. We need to be
You have to stay relevant because I'm sure you would know this. Not too long ago, people used to generally get I want to say, I guess the younger generation, which I used to be back then. I used to get a lot of my current news and things from comedy outlets.
Yeah.
Like that's how it was presented.
No, Daily Show changed the
Daily
game
Show,
with it,
the guy from South Africa.
or Trevor Noah.
Well, he
Trevor
was,
Noah,
he was
sorry,
on
yeah.
Daily Show.
Yeah, well,
But when Jon Stewart took over Daily Show from Craig Kilborn, before that it was just a kind of talk show.
it was
just
more focused
straight
on
comedy.
the comedy itself.
But Jon
And yeah.
Stewart made it into a news comedy program, and that changed how
Yeah, because he was setting
our
different dynamics.
generation
Yeah.
Yeah.
took in the news,
Yeah,
and then Facebook became a news platform.
yeah.
He started, John started getting a different caliber of guests as well on the show.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like presidential candidates, it was
because they realized that is how that particular generation started consuming the news. They couldn't just go on with Walter Cronkite
Yeah.
or some other aged person. They had to go, all right, well, Jon Stewart, Colbert Report, as ironic as that was.
And they used to do different spin-offs because they're like, okay, we already have these people watching. Let's cater to these people now. So they used to do like little Saturday Night Live-esque skits in the show as well, and you're still getting your relevant news. You still know what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, but you're getting your comedy as well. And
It was lighter and less stuffy.
Yeah. Well,
And then
I think comedy is actually one of the great ways of informing very quickly, and you kind of get to the point, and people learn a lot through it.
and you get a little joke too. But I think now you could maybe comment on this. It changed traditional news because they then tried to loosen their tie a little bit.
Yeah.
And in cases like CNN and things, just became ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like way too opinionated.
Yeah.
You are here to report, ma'am.
Yeah.
Not tell me what you think about it. That's the comedian's job.
No, of course.
I come to you for actual news now.
Yeah.
Not your opinion.
Yeah.
And so I think it actually, in their attempt to keep up,
Yeah.
they made themselves
It was disruptive.
a
Yeah.
farce. It
No.
totally disrupted them, but it took them down the wrong road as far
Yeah.
as in my opinion.
No, 100%. So to unpack a couple of things that you guys said there, right? So going back to Vaughn's point about the formats and the younger people and stuff like that, and like how the Daily Show and everything came up, and those kind of became satire news and everything. It's happening now again, right? So all of those shows that we found to be relevant, like those things are, I mean, I'm sorry if I offend anybody who's a big fan of those shows, but they're generally irrelevant now in terms
Yeah,
of
no,
the.
that's
in
why
ter-
I said, yeah.
In terms of the audience size they have now as compared to what they used to be. Why?
Yeah.
Because that format has now shifted again. People are getting that same format still, but they're getting it on independent media, right? So, like for somebody like me, I will sit down and how I consume news mostly is current events discussion on a couple of my favorite podcasts, right? So,
I just didn't want to cut you off,
Yeah.
but I discussed this with friends. Like the people that we need to get on the show are like a certain age bracket, like not too serious. We still have to know what you're talking about. How to really say this, how to explain this without inflating Niko's head. Like you wanna
my head can't get any bigger than it is already.
That is true.
It wouldn't fit in my car.
that is
to be
true.
honest.
It'll be out of the shots.
He's fine. He'll just be there saying, "You're right. I am great."
No, but so in my mind, I know like I wanted our guests to be, funny, intelligent,
And
attractive.
You invite me?
Well,
You'll
I mean,
get there
one
eventually.
out-
Don't worry. You'll get there eventually.
One out-
I
one
believe
out of-
in you, bro.
One
You'll
out
get
of
there
three.
eventually.
You know what I mean? You're my bro, so I was like, come on.
Get my blind.
Yeah. But like
You had to land a few 6 out of 10s before you could get a 10 out of 10, bro.
you
That
know,
is-
well, we all know this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So every single episode is not going to be like we wouldn't knock it out of the park. So today, it's Niko. But no, but for real, like, so you're watching this episode today, and you can take away like a wealth of information if you are specifically interested in media marketing.
Everybody uses social media to market now. That is just the way of the world. So knowing how algorithms work, knowing what platforms are popular, at what times of day, and all this kind of thing. These are all things you need to read up on
Yeah.
and study for yourself, because social media marketing or content creation can be a full-time job if you decide to make it, and it had to be worth your while.
Yeah, no, people actually don't appreciate the amount of time and effort that goes into doing this thing well, right? It looks effortless, but anything done well like that, trust me.
Everybody who does anything well makes it look effortless.
100%, right? But you don't know how many times they had to shoot that video over and over to get that one perfect take, right?
Yeah.
Or how many times, God knows, the audience might even know. Maybe we made some huge mistakes during this show and we had to cut them out and
And
edit them.
Vaughn just edited
I will
it
definitely
seamlessly.
edit.
Yeah,
them out.
exactly, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that you have with social media the fact that everybody has a camera and it's kind of unlimited potential at that point now, because anybody could literally just start their own whatever they wanted, right? And that's the beauty of it, right? And I think that's where a lot of the modern media companies, big media companies, are having a lot of trouble competing in, because how do you compete against one man in a studio with a couple microphones and a video editor who has, let's use Joe Rogan as an example. Joe Rogan probably has the collective audience of all the major networks combined. And he's literally just a man in a room, whatever, and you could put all the resources into your network and you can't really compete with that.
You will
right? Because
never be able to
it's a
compete
secret
with that.
sauce. But it's so many different things changing about the world, and so much to wrap your head around. And kind of to touch back on the point that you made earlier, Franz, you mentioned CNN, right? I feel like, at least it's from my personal point of view, when I've looked at what has happened to American media over the past couple of years, it's been a real travesty, right? In terms of, and it's, first of all, it's highly polarized, whether left wing, right wing, whatever it is. But
On purposely so, yeah.
of course, yeah. But I think what happened, and you touched on that very important point, which was, at some point, it really stopped being news in a lot of instances, and it's a bunch of people telling me their very colored opinions on things, right? And I get it. Companies have to make money, right? That is just the nature of the world. You're not doing business out to the goodness so you have. The company has to make profit to survive. You have employees to pay all this different stuff. And when the advertising dollars are drying up, which is what you depend on as your life,
You have to push an agenda.
you have to find a way to make the views come, because advertisers not putting their ads on you unless you have the eyeballs. So I think what has happened is you've seen the media kind of get into this space of sensationalism and opinions, and it's this echo chamber. So all the left-wing people will go to MSNBC and CNN and whatever, and they will hear everything that aligns with their worldview, and then you will have all the right-wing people will probably go to Fox and Newsmax and everything, and it's just the echo chambers, and it's like what you call it, almost like rage that you just get people angry and they keep coming back and they get the eyeballs and they get people advertising on it. But that is a very kind of short-term thing, right? Because more and more people are falling out of favor with it. And what is happening? They're turning now to the sources that aren't doing that because they want the authenticity. They want people that are actually speaking, neutral about topics. Objectively, asking the hard questions, exploring topics, understanding that, there are many topics in this world that are actually very in-depth and nuanced, and you cannot have this broad brush that you're trying to, paint and just say, well, this is how it is because this government did that or whatever, right? A lot of these things require diving into, and it's very difficult, going back to the format thing, it's very difficult to touch these kind of topics when you're trying to do it in a 1-minute soundbite on a news network, right? And I think that is why you're seeing the rise of so much independent media, and you're seeing the rise of all these new formats, particularly on social media. And I think right now we have people consuming long-form content like never before in history, right? The fact that this video will be posted and you might have a couple hundred people sit down and listen to us three sit down and blab about stuff for an hour and something. It's kind of unheard of in any time in history before. This was only something that would have happened, like, and even so, you might think a couple hundred people, it might sound small in the internet scheme of things, but as a brand new podcast, let's say for example, the three of us was in this room and we had 500 people in front of us right now. You know what that would feel like?
That'd be huge, yeah.
That would be
mad.
Yeah. Now, when you put it online, it might seem like a small amount, but when you really think about the fact that these numbers, my video got 1,000 views, my video got 2,000 views, 1,000,000 views. You know, just to sit down in a room with 1,000 people who just came to hear you speak, that is crazy, bro. That is really crazy, right? Yeah, and I think that is what you're seeing right now is that the big media networks are trying to figure out how do they compete with independent media. And the only thing that they found to kind of stop the hemorrhaging in the short term is doing this type of engagement farming where you beat these things over and over and over. But I think people are falling out. The trust in news is falling globally. You will see that if you look up any of the research. Yeah. The consumption of news is falling, and the younger people aren't coming up, like I mentioned, to replace the last set. So I guess my journey ahead and where my head is at, taking all of this different stuff that we've spoken about is, how do I take all of this information that we have now, being very aware of the challenges that we face, not just as a local and regional publisher, but what publishers are going through all across the world, what content creators are facing all across the world, and being able to bring that level of authenticity, objectivity, and bringing it in the formats that people actually want to consume, right? Not the format I want you to consume, the format you want to consume, right? Because that's the way you're going to win. And that's what I fundamentally believe, sorry.
Yeah, and I think you use one of my favorite words, nuanced.
Yeah.
You cannot have nuance in blurbs.
Yeah.
You can't. A TikTok video argument or this, it's not even a discussion. A TikTok video argument must be devoid of nuance by force because you have, 30 seconds?
Exactly.
You can't present a based argument on that. So long form content is really the only way to dive into whichever topic.
And challenge people on ideas too. Because, I don't believe in the censorship thing. I mean, except, in some rare instances, there's some things that really should not be out there. I believe that let people speak and let the ideas go there. Because if they're bad ideas, they could be challenged and they could be broken down in real time. And they should be challenged, right? But then when you start to censor it, you probably light a fire underneath it, right? The sound bites is another thing that I have a problem with, and I see it all the time. I see people fall for it all the time, and it's because, we could go deep with this thing, right? It's just the way our brains are wired up now in the modern day. Social media has kind of broken everybody's brains. We want the quick, instant gratification. We only have a 30-second attention span. We just want to see this video. But a lot of this content where people are just getting mad over politics and all of this different stuff. US politics is probably the prime example of it, right? The soundbite is an intentionally misleading edited clip where you just take somebody's sentence out of context and then you run that to say this is what this person means. And people get mad about it and they share it and everything like that, but you don't understand. You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're gonna get those views today.
Because eventually they will see it in context and realize,
yeah,
You're
and
misled.
me.
yeah, I think the I mean, again, sorry if I offend anybody, right? I hope doesn't come back to bite me in the ass, but I personally believe the media house that probably saw the biggest fall from grace over the past couple of years was CNN.
It has to be CNN.
Yeah, right?
CNN used to be,
Yeah.
when I was growing up, that was news.
Exactly. CNN
That
was
was-
synonymous with news.
That was
That
it,
was
yeah.
the only news.
Yeah,
I mean, you had CBS News and there were news personalities
Yeah.
in so many other stations, but CNN, when CNN came out, it was
CNN
news.
was like the pinnacle, yeah.
yeah,
Credibility, yeah.
But now it's.
yeah.
I mean,
really,
honestly, I want CNN to have a laugh
yeah,
at how they will report this story.
Yeah.
Because I know the story, I know the headline. Now, how are you going to report
You want
the
to hear
headline?
their version. And really and truly, news shouldn't have different versions.
Versions.
Yeah.
exactly. And that's why I said, like, what I realized, and particularly, if you spend a lot of time on Twitter, or X as it's called now, you see it plain as day, bro. It's almost like people exist in two different realities. There are people who exist in this reality based on what their news is telling them, and then there are people who exist in this reality over here based on what their news is telling them, and they have two entirely different worldviews, right? And I feel sorry for them a lot of times.
And the world is actually in the middle.
In the middle,
That,
yeah.
to me, that is one of these. I actually think about that, and I wouldn't say terrifying, but it's extremely concerning. Like, imagine this amount of people have no idea what is actually
What
going on. You
actually happens in the
you could
world.
literally just make something up,
Yeah.
package it nice, how I know you want it to be packaged, and you taking that and carrying that into your house and sharing it up with your family and everything.
Yeah.
And just before I forget, like, I really want to shout out France because like when the podcast idea was being fleshed out and whatever the case may be, you know, you obviously, so you're taking criticism from different people to mold the actual product, and nobody wanted like the long format. They're like, yeah, this is too long, but Franz was like very insistent, like, no, we need to flesh
100%.
out discussions. And personally, I understand it, so I will be receptive to every single opinion. And for me, it wasn't as much of an issue as it was for Fran, because I was like, yeah, no problem. I will work on his shorts, but like Fran was extremely insistent. I mean, you'll get both because like I know for a fact that I would want to work more on shorts because that would appeal to a different dynamic, and then you get more reach, but you don't want to lose the foundation itself. So no matter what happens, and the trend shifts, like we still have that credibility to stand on, where you can sit down, sift through an episode and be like, okay, this makes sense. This was dissected properly. That is actually bullshit. You could even look at an episode and you could comment your opinions, and because we really want to be as interactive as possible, because that is your reward for sticking with us for like an hour, 2 hours away. Like we really do owe it to anybody who has that kind of patience. Like you comment something, you have an issue with this, like we have to make the time to like address your opinion, your concerns.
Yeah, 100%.
You know?
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, when I was coming here, and just reflecting on my own thoughts, you know, being asked to come and sit here and just have a long form discussion. The thought in the back of my head, sorry, is, you know, what value can I really add for the audience, right? And sometimes you feel everybody's guilty of it. Everybody has a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes, you know, in the back of your head. Like, do these people really want to hear what I have to say? Maybe, maybe not, right? But I think as you guys continue to grow in the show, the main thing you could do is just always try to add value to the audience, right? And I'm really happy that, you know, when people are trying to discourage you guys from doing the long form podcast format, that you guys stuck with it, because it's badly needed, right? And we don't really have that level of in-depth discussion. And just even the couple episodes I watched from you guys, I know these people. When I say not personally, right? Some I might know personally, but when I've seen some of the episodes already, I know of them. I know who they are in the public sphere, but to actually hear deep insights into a lot of things is great. And maybe it wouldn't get everybody, but I bet you bottom dollar, the 500 people that listen to this podcast would be really quality audience that would actually sit here for an hour and listen to what people have to say.
I think we've already established, I guess, our base followers. I think that because, like, is not many. There aren't many episodes to sift through right now, but I could just look at the views. So it's like, okay, cool. It's more or less like an average viewership across the board. So I'll give the episode, some weeks, and come back.
Yeah.
Now we're in kind of like the experimental phase where let's try this, and then you pay attention to this specifically different format or different style episode to see like how it would perform versus the others and whatever case would be. Because remember, we still want to improve. You know what I mean? Because we obviously aren't the best podcast in the world. So if I realize like, okay, they actually really like that episode where Franz was bareback, So now we have to try to fit more of that into the.
Has not been aired yet.
So we have to fit more of that into the format then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And aside from being extremely glad that Franz was kind of adamant about that, I'm extremely glad that you are here finally on the show itself, right? So everybody watching who had their advice and whatever the case may be, like Niko is an actual expert in this field, and this is what I regularly hear anyway. Look at it, because there will always be doubts in my mind. Maybe Niko is being patronizing because he's actually just my friend. Maybe he's like, yeah, I really like this, or whatever the case may be. Because it's basically just like I open my inbox, groan, it's like, what is going on with Niko's algorithm? And so we actually interact like that, like, need to delete this chat. Need to delete this chat ASAP.
Yeah.
But Niko's the first person I wanted on the show.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I appreciate that, bro. I appreciate that.
First name phone call is, yeah, we could have Niko on. I was like, cool.
Franz was
no
like,
problem.
what the fuck, bro? But I was like, Franz, trust me.
Don't do that.
It's like, I want to start a whole new podcast just to have him.
Whoa. Franz was like, Vaughn, are you high, Vaughn?
What
I was like,
for?
Franz, trust me.
I don't
This-
drink white oak.
This is going to work.
So I'm actually not drinking these days, so
And
unfortunately,
kudos.
I can't be white oak poster boy these days. But
Damn.
They lost a good one, boy.
Yeah.
White oak, they dropped the ball, boy. And
Yeah,
lost
boy.
Niko, yes, way.
Now Niko
You see how
spends his...
quickly algorithms could change? The man don't drink white oak no more, boy.
Listen, we'll see how long it lasts. So, yeah.
But you can't line with Danny again. That is it.
Big up, Danny. Yeah.
Big up, Danny.
Yeah, but you can't even line with Danny again.
I could have never I could have never lined with Danny. I don't know what you're talking about. That used to be, bro.
Yeah. But
Just to cut away for a little bit of levity. Like when we lime, so to be me, Niko, Ryan, and Danny, Lyman. Maybe I mightn't be informed that Danny is perfectly cool, by the way. Not, shout outs to Danny. But I will just show up to the lime and it's like, all right, cool, we're gonna, have a nice relaxing blag, a couple drinks, and then Danny is there pouring out stiff drinks with no ice, nothing. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, holy shit.
It is time to turn up, fellas.
Yeah, when you lime with Danny, the last time I went to him, and like, when last you got so hungover, like you hugging up a pillow and like, and that is how you just feel.
Don't ever make that sound again.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. But that is what home by me was sounding like at that hour of the morning. I was like, nah, boy. Not me and Danny. She would make a joke.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we really need to be like, definitely not.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I'll get taken down in a big way.
Luckily, it's been a while since I've made
Been in
sounds
that-
like that.
been in that.
Hooking up pillows and then, yeah.
Bro, that was my condition.
Yeah.
No, that's actually serious though. Like I finally, in my 40s, learned where to like, you know what, maybe it should stop now. And like, all right. And I remember when I made that discovery, and I wake up without a hangover the next day.
Yeah.
Having had a good night the night before, consume some drinks, and I wake up without a hangover, and I could be a productive member of society. I'm like, what new world is this, boy?
Actually, liming with Danny made me kind of stop drinking alcohol because I realized like
Or she gonna watch this episode
This
and
is
just
not-
be like,
I realized like this is not making sense at all. I feeling mash up, you know, and yeah, thanks a lot, Danny.
Thanks, Danny. No, that's things to thank for.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
nah, but
Just
I
fed up
know-
making this noise, boy. Gonna stop
Yeah.
drinking.
No, but bro, I mean, just to kind of pivot, you know, I know we were talking the media thing before, but just as we're on the topic of drinking. So everybody know me, you know, socially, always been a big drinker, always going out liming, you know, like my rum, whatever, right? This not drinking thing is a pretty new thing for me. I've been doing it for about 4 months now. The interesting thing to observe for me has been, again, I have no problem with anybody drinking or telling anybody stop drinking. I just doing something for a short period of time, right? I have no problem with alcohol, anything like that. But it's been interesting to watch when I tell people I am not drinking, what the response to that is.
It's always interesting.
Yeah,
Are
it
you-
is.
are you okay?
Trainees don't know how.
You see,
mean,
I have never really experienced it because
it's
I've
a-
always been a big drinker. But now it is almost like I don't know, boy. Like I insulting them. Like the level of peer pressure for me to drink is insane. I
No,
never
right, true.
experienced anything like it.
And I was about to say trainees don't know how to handle that, but honestly, it's a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
Anywhere where alcohol is a common social lubricant,
Yeah.
nine are drinking, or no, I don't drink, will be met with, how come?
What is wrong with you?
I remember Jim Gaffigan
Yeah.
was saying alcohol is the only thing where if you say, no, I don't do that, they'll ask, why? It's like, nobody will say, oh, I don't like mayonnaise. You don't like mayonnaise? Why? Are you pregnant?
No mustard.
Now, in fairness, in Trinidad, when somebody say they don't like something to eat, they'll be like, "That's because you never eat it from me."
Yeah, well, that is actual facts.
Yeah.
That is, yeah, boy.
But I get what you're saying. It's just been interesting, you know, to have been doing it for just a short period of time now and observe the difference. And people are like, how long are you going to be doing it for? I don't know. You know, I've been just kind of feeling it out. You know,
Yeah.
everything fits time. I just like to be able to say, well, you know, nothing has control over me. So if it is that I wanted to stop this and purge myself from it for a little while, I should be able to do that.
Yeah,
And it
that's
should-
cool.
Yeah.
You know, it shouldn't
Yeah.
really be a problem, you know?
Like
yeah.
6 or 7 years ago, I would have been one of them like, oh God, come now, boy, have a drink now.
Yeah.
But I had, the reason I found my limit with alcohol was after a bad, just drunken breakdown. Just,
Yeah.
I should not have been drinking that night anyway because I was in a bad mood.
Yeah.
And I was at well, have one more drink now, you'll feel better.
Yeah.
And that just didn't work for all
It never does.
the drink. It never does. Let me
Yeah.
just say that one more drink and you'll feel better does not work.
Yeah.
Anyway, and the level of breakdown that I had when I got home, that was the only time I ever woke up and seriously said, this can never happen again.
Yeah.
I've had countless hangovers.
Yeah.
It's affected relationships. That's the only time I said, this can never happen again.
Yeah.
And yeah, just kind of found that limit. And anybody who's like, nah, not drinking or not drinking for a while or
Yeah.
stop drinking, I'm like,
Well,
kudos to you, bro.
I think you touched on a really important thing there too, because you know, on self-reflection, I was also one of them people like, you can't tell me you're not drinking, bro. You're mad or what? Like,
I remember.
yeah, right. But you know what I mean. So and now this period has made me much more aware of it, and quite frankly, like I said, I don't know how long I'm gonna be off it for, but when or if I do start back drinking,
Christmas. I know Niko extremely well, so I can.
anyhow, before propaganda was injected into this. But what I was gonna say is, I think I'll be much more aware of it now. I know I will be much more aware of it going forward. Now, I wouldn't be pushing people to do it, right? And you know, it's going back to what you said there too, Franz, in terms of taking one more drink and how you'd feel and everything like that. I mean, I have tons of different friends who some of them handle their alcohol way better than others. You know, some of them use it to escape from their problems, which we all know doesn't work because then by the end of the night, the problem just manifests itself in a bigger way than it ever has.
Now you have another problem, which is that you are drunk.
You have like 3 different problems
Yeah.
now.
And you've probably pissed everybody off in your life. Too,
Yeah, that's
right?
one of the problems.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the one thing that I've learned with alcohol over time is that I look at alcohol like is an amplifier, right? That's what it is, right? So it just amplifies whatever you're already feeling. So if you're already happy, it'll probably bring that out to you. If you have some problems in dealing with alcohol, it's probably going to bring that out to you, right? So that's kind of the way I look at alcohol. You know, again, there's probably a bit of nuance in there that he could pick apart, but generally you find that to be true, that, you know, you're not going to drink alcohol and go from being sad to being happy. That's not going to happen. It probably is just
Generally not.
Maybe you might get a temporary kind of...
Not that, so like in my experience with that,
Yeah,
not if you overdo the consumption.
yeah,
Like if you need, so like in my case, not necessarily sad, but if I'm stressed, if I feel like I need a bit of a release for whatever emotion is, and I go out and I have a drink, and we in Trinidad, so that's at least 2,
yeah.
and I keep it there because I just got out and I just needed to get out and relax because I mean, as Trinis, that's kind of how we relax. You go out with a friend, you have a drink, and then I can go back home. Cool.
Yeah.
If I go out with the intent that I'm gonna drink until I feel better, that's a bad night.
Yeah.
You will most likely just make other people feel better. That's kind of how, that's kind of how that works. Because to me, when I see people like shit faced, drunk, or whatever it gives me, that kind of shit, that's, humorous to me. Cheers me up.
It is, and it does.
You know?
And there's honestly few more frustrating things than being sober one in an extremely drunken line.
Yeah,
oh my
man.
God, drunk people are annoying. But anyway,
But yeah, so I don't want to let Niko leave without. Since we have ruined any chance of sponsorship from any alcohol distributors in Trinidad and Tobago,
I don't know that we've ruined it because I drink regularly on this show.
Sweet.
There's
All right.
always a mug of
Just need to
something
get rid
here.
of.
No, but the thing is an important discussion happening globally right now too. In fact, a lot of the alcohol brands are rolling out non-alcoholic versions of their same core brand. I don't want to name any particular brands, but there's a beer right now making the wrongs. I was drinking it earlier, just 0% alcohol.
Yeah.
Right, because the non-drinking thing kind of is picking up globally too, right? And there's always potential there, because the reality with alcohol is just responsible consumption.
Responsible, and I mean, every single alcohol brand has that as part of the slogan: drink responsibly.
Exactly.
And that's not always don't drink and drive.
Yeah.
It could be don't mash yourself up and
Don't drink and
you
crash.
can't function.
Yeah, because there's
for
a
2
limit.
days.
There's a limit that you have to cross before you trigger a breathalyzer.
Yeah.
So as long as you're aware of that, you are good to go.
But again, it's not even just a breathalyzer. It's don't drink until you're useless to yourself and society for 2 days straight.
Yeah.
I mean, that is irresponsible.
Danny.
drinking.
I'm not touching that. you will take your licks by yourself.
Well, so that is actually what I wanted to just segue into before we let Niko leave here because he has really blessed our show. Driving.
And thank you for the validation of the long form content.
Yeah.
Because I was
100% because
no line about that, like I will be cussing.
he was
with him.
real upset.
But bro,
We are not shortening this content. There's too much nuance for the conversations we're gonna have for it to be a 20-minute show.
yeah, you can't really add value like that. But
Imagine having this discussion with Niko and it's like, all right, so moving on to, you know what I mean? It'll be silly.
You can't flesh out the points. All right, we have 30 more seconds.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about your white oak consumption?
Impossible.
No, but just to cap that one off too, I think one of the interesting things that you said earlier, Vaughn, is that a lot of people was telling all they do this, whatever, right? Boy, you had to be real careful about who you listen to, right? Whenever people come to you and they tell you things that, they give you their opinion, you have to qualify people's opinions too, right? And I am a person like that, and because I just have inbound so many people always telling you everything.
Same, yeah.
You have to ask yourself, all right, not all opinions are equal. Everybody has an opinion, but not all are equal. Why should I listen to you? Why should I listen to you? why is your
What are
opinion?
you an expert of?
Exactly,
You know?
right?
So yeah.
I
But
appreciate
not just that, but what are your interests?
exactly.
Are your interests aligned with our interests?
Exactly, right? Because you don't know what I am trying to do here, so how could you give me advice
Exactly.
on that? But
And-
also, if you really think about it, right, you gotta be very careful about just taking advice from people because by nature, most people have average intelligence. If you really think about what the word average means, the vast majority of people fall into average intelligence because of the fact that that's what the average is, that's what the majority of the group is. It's very rare that you get really, truly amazing advice from crowds. Like people will come and tell you like that because if it was that amazing, somebody else would probably be doing it already, right? Or they would act on it and everything like that. So it's not to say that you can't get good advice from people. It's just that just because somebody comes and tells you something, that doesn't mean like it's some profound thing that you should act on. You could take it, you could think about it, but that doesn't mean like, oh, well, you know better than I do. Because you know what? Both you and I might just be of average intelligence, and your point of view is no more different than mine, right? And therefore, what I'm trying to do, I think I'm on the right path here, and nobody's done what I've done before, so there's no data point for me to pull from. I just need to do this thing and then see
how it goes.
how it works, right? Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. When Joe Rogan started his podcast, he didn't know it would be where it was today. I'm sure he's wake up every morning
No,
and be
he
like,
was just high and wanted
Exactly.
to chat with his friends.
right. So you never know, maybe in the 10-year anniversary of this podcast, you might be looking back on it and thinking about, look back at this same episode and cringe. You might be like, whoa, that show was real.
No, I know.
terrible, but-
I joke about it with friends all the time. Like we look back at this episode or this episode, and it's like, why was I?
I probably gonna look back at this
Speaking
episode
like this.
when it finally airs and be like,
Why did I have on a denim jacket?
exactly, because
Jesus.
for those who don't know, today Hurricane Beryl passed through Trinidad. The place was rainy and cold outside.
Right,
and
well,
I
they
came
just
in a
dated it.
jacket.
Hurricane Beryl passed through Trinidad this morning.
That's cool.
That's why Niko is wearing a denim jacket
No, I mean, but
for
I mean,
a hurricane.
I was saying outside was wet, rain was falling. I had on a jacket. Thank you,
he
Frank.
put on
ideal.
Stop.
A denim
a
jacket.
denim jacket.
Stop jacket shaming. me.
rain.
Stop jacket
No,
shaming.
but as you're talking about episodes, you're gonna look back on that first episode with Faith, when we didn't even have a tripod and we propped the phone
Yeah,
up
that
on
was
the arm of the chair.
like right where Nico's arm is. The camera was just propped. Like you could actually see it
So-
leaning on the chair.
seriously?
I actually got
Yeah.
So you see the whole arm of the chair,
Yeah.
and then us. So I got a cousin of mine, Nick, I love you. Sent messages as feedback now because he's another guy I really respect in media and thing, but he's in Canada, so he couldn't be here. You've actually met him, or y'all interacted on Facebook because you asked him, so how do you spell your Nikolas?
Oh yes.
And I was like, oh, well, the only way to spell it then. And he was like, so let me ask you, the camera angle, what was the decision behind that choice? Because it feels like I'm sitting on a chair looking on, but it also kind of limits me. It's like, bro, that was necessity. Like, we actually
Yeah,
didn't
we
have a
didn't.
tripod.
I mean,
I like that you give us credit. Like, what was the choice? Like, why did you all choose this? It's
Artistic
giving you the
flair.
benefit of the doubt.
like, he does. I know he was choosing his words carefully there. Like, we just didn't have a tripod.
Bro, that's just how it goes sometimes. You just have to get started. Don't just
And
Yeah.
Faith was already here now, so it couldn't be like, well, I guess not tonight then.
Yeah,
Like,
she
no,
would have
we-
like
Making
should
this
have been. I
happen.
feel should have been because she was like already upset about like me setting up. You
You
know.
and your Crocs and
Yeah, where everything was going all wrong. I like from Faith's perspective. But before we wrap up,
Yeah,
I
driving.
also want
actually, yeah, you've
So-
been trying to
Trying
raise
to,
a
yeah.
point
third
about
time
kids.
Vaughn's trying to get us out of here.
so driving. Niko is actually what you might not also know about Niko, aside from the loop and everything marketing. Niko is actually like one of those notable names in the Trini, I want to say Mazda underground, because he's the son of the legendary BK.
The
All right.
original masterman.
So if you have even the slightest interest in anything Mazda, I want to say for the last, I would know of 3 decades, BK is the guy. You know what I mean? And timeless. People come and go. BK does not. Like Mazda, I think they named an engine after him just to.
They will.
They already did.
They
It's,
did.
it's out
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. It's out there. They did. This is 100% facts. Niko has had like a, I want to say a pretty an interesting collection of Mazda vehicles over the years, as did BK. I wouldn't say collector's items, but
I guess always very very
unique,
very
yeah.
unique builds. I would say.
Unique builds, unique, actually specific models of. It will usually be like the highest spec of cars that you are accustomed seeing, but like the difference in the specs would actually be, several car lengths, and then they would do like some crazy builds, and like Niko has actually done these things, some crazy builds, and really push the envelope. So in case y'all like hearing the name and it's like a kind of a vague Niko, I know that Niko Khan or whatever the case may be. Yeah, this is actually that guy. So you could also, be interested in watching this episode because, Niko's one of your Mazda heroes. I did get into Mazda, I guess, following in Niko. I got a couple of the cars that he already had, and I, entered from there. Endless advice from BK over the years. I know I used to be like real bugging him, so he'd be like, I'm like on a call. He's like, yeah, well, right now it's time for my afternoon siesta.
Yeah,
so
that's his word. Yes, that's what I know. That's what I know for sure he was talking to.
No.
He probably gonna be listening to this and laughing.
no, like you're talking. You're like, yeah. So what about let me pick back up this call a little later now because I see it's time for my afternoon siesta. And in my mind,
Sir.
I was like, yeah. In my mind, I was like, wait, yeah, like I already keep him on the phone long, already, man. Like fucking him up. I was right, but that is actually his thing.
Yeah.
He can talk. He will talk about cars all day.
Yeah, but he does not play with that siesta. This is a real thing.
I mean, not to drag on this episode too long, but that actually made me think about some interesting things. So, first interesting fact: the reason my name is Nikolas with a K, right, and I Kolas is because I was named after his favorite Formula One driver at the time, which would have been Niki Lauda, right, Andreas Nikolas Lauda, right. So that's where that comes from. So he's live and breed cars his entire life, right? And he really does it inside out. Like I said, not just if you're in the Mazda space, but generally most people in the car scene know who he is or
For sure.
with him, right? He's been out there a long time. But in an interesting way, as you mentioned, the siesta, a large part of that, when I think about my dad and all the things that he's done with his whole car scene and everything like that wasn't his job. His job, he used to work in Point Lisas, he used to work in, the various incarnations of Metal Steel before it was closed down. He had retired by that point, thankfully, but Metal, Ispat, Iscot, all the different things. But when we were going to school and we were growing up and everything like that, he had to find a way to kind of make a side hustle and make things meet. And I think that's really how he started to grow his name and his cars and, buying and selling and hustling parts and modifying cars and everything like that. And, he kind of became synonymous with it. And I'm always very, very grateful for him that he managed to turn something that was his passion on the side into a little bit of a side hustle to, provide for his family and stuff like that. And now it actually brings me a real massive amount of joy that my dad, growing up, we may not always have been in the best financial position for him to have everything. Now in his older years, when he's actually in that position, he has his cars, and it's a fun thing to be able to get together with the old man, and I go in my car and he goes in his car,
have like that kind of mutual interest.
Yeah.
It's admirable.
I might jump in the Miata and he in the RX and we going up the road to go.
Humble brag.
Yeah, no, that was an outright brag. That was not humble brag. But but yeah, what I mean? It is a cool thing if you really think about it. I'm very grateful of it, grateful for it. I'm very mindful of what it is to be able to have that relationship with your old man where, you're both in the cars, you can both jump in your cars, you could go and rip up the road
amazing.
Together, and you head into Cars and Coffee on a Sunday morning and you're pulling together, and that's vibes, and I really appreciate that, and I don't ever overlook it. So, really, really appreciate the fact that my dad is, so much into it and, has built up what he has.
Yeah, 100%. I hope you are watching this episode, BK, because I have supported you over the years.
I'll shoot it.
So yeah, shout out to BK. We are going to wrap up with that. There's literally nothing else that we could extract from Niko. I mean, nothing else of value that we could extract from Niko.
Just a lot of quality shit talk. But
Franz, he's not in the chat, so he wouldn't know.
So it's not quality?
Franz, One had to talk to me for about a week before I come on this one.
Yeah,
About
I was
saying,
like,
"Bro,
Niko, so we not.
you
Things
can't
you
say
can't
that.
say.
You cannot say that."
All right.
So I was like, well, what are you even coming
So
with?
why gonna do? You know,
So yeah.
like he would send me like submissions like, so what about this? Like, absolutely not.
X.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, but maybe when the show get a little bigger.
We'll have to actually do that.
A
You could come on the
different
underground show, or we could come on your show because if this episode did not, I don't even want to say confirm. If this episode did not make it abundantly clear that sometime in the future Niko is going to have a hand in a podcast, then I don't think you were paying attention to us for the last 60-something odd minutes, right? And I wanna hope that we'll get the invite, but I mean, no pressure. So thank you a million, Niko, for finally coming on the podcast. This was I feel like I always say this was my favorite episode.
Yeah. Because one of the things I've noticed, and I said this with Tano last week, there's a few common threads that run through each episode. One of them is
Perseverance.
the amount of information we get from the guest in their field.
Yeah.
Because we always learn
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah. And it feeds
Either-
into future conversations.
This episode started off with me being so quiet, like I was conscious of it. I'm like, I need to say something, but I'm literally just like,
Just absorbing.
yeah.
And it's either the information of the field itself, which, like for the first half of it was yours, or it's information about the person, which came out at the end.
Yeah.
But the other common thread is what you were talking about, where you're in the room with as Loop and people laughing at you,
Naysayers, yeah.
and you forge ahead. That level of perseverance. Every single episode we've had is a validation of just keep going.
Yeah.
You've started, just keep going. People will laugh at you, people will fight you down, people will ignore you outright.
Yeah.
Just keep going. People will give you advice as to how they think your thing should run.
Yeah.
Do your thing. And then, 10 years later, you may have changed the way media is consumed in the region.
Yeah, 100%. And,
Yeah.
touching on that point, just to wrap up is, something that I realize about successful people across the board, you have to be willing to be disliked, right? So and allow, people will say things about you, people will laugh at you, whatever. That's all right. Our human nature is that, we always want to retreat to safety and comfort and toe the line and make sure we do have people saying things about us and whatever, right? So when people laugh at you, you might want to adjust your behavior. Sometimes you just need to push through.
Yeah, nobody want to help you bake the bread. They just want a slice on it,
Yeah, don't worry about people who dislike you. I mean, at the end of the day, most people don't even like themselves. So don't hurt your head too much about them not liking you. Right? So
Facts, man.
That's a short right there.
yeah.
Edit.
But I can't say enough how much I appreciate you, Niko, for coming on the show. I guess my only regret is that we don't have more time because there's a lot more that we could, or maybe a little bit more that we could.
Yes, we'll have to have him on again then.
Yeah, no problem. No
man,
problem.
Olive feed me and give me drinks before the show so I could come back here anytime.
Yeah.
Right, that's true. That's true. Shouts to 519.
Shout out to 519 once again. Thank you, as always, for being so patient with us and not kicking us out. So, guys, thanks to you as well for joining us for another episode of the Laymans Project, and we will see you again, same time, same place next week.
All right.
Cheers. He exemplifies the fusion of business acumen and environmental stewardship. He is also a roti bantan, well known in
The Roti
Some
Raja.
Roti Raja.
That I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I know you are.
Above all else.
I know you are.
I mean, like, I listening to you, like, who's this guy?
Who's this
like,
man?
let's get to the
sounding
good
real
stuff.
Let's get to the
boring
Roti
boy, but
Raja
you
stuff,
see-
right?
you see Roti.
So just for everybody, DI is diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And, it's one thing talking about it, and it's a next thing experiencing it. And true story. So last year, I think it was, we put out feelers for a position in terms of to fill or whatever for the organization. And we invited people to submit their application, usual thing, right? And then so people applied, and then one day, hey, my staff came to me and said, hey, we have something to talk to you about. So I'll tell you all after. So they came and they showed me, hey, this person applied. I was like, okay, no problem. They're like, okay, cool, we just wanted you to know. So in walks to the interview, somebody dressed in trousers, shirt, tie, hair back in a ponytail, and a beard, much like yours, but clearly a female, and applying for a position in your organization. And I just say, like, culturally, that's a lot to manage if you're seeing that for the first time. So I
like how you put it.
Yeah.
There's a lot to manage.
It is.
And what you just said there reminds me of, forget the exact quote, but society moves forward when men plant trees
Exactly.
under whose shade they will never
Yeah.
sit.
Great men plant, and I paraphrase it also, right? Great men plant trees in terms of the shade that they won't
They
enjoy.
will never enjoy.
And this is a challenge of our generation, guys. This is if we, when we leave, we must set up the next generation. And I would say that Point Lisa State is a good example. Somebody set us up to reap the rewards of that, But what are we leaving for our generation? What are we leaving for our kids? What are we leaving for our grandkids?